So glad that everybody's able to join us today in light of the global pandemic. We hope you and your loved ones are staying safe and healthy. While everyone is at home staying safe, we hope that this workshop gives you the opportunity to get away from the real world for a little bit. So we're part of PTC, an organization that holds conferences, workshops, and panels for anyone who's interested in the world of tech. Check us out on our website or on any of our social media. So for today's workshop, we are going to be exploring the crossover between VR and art by creating our own VR vacation scene. To do this, we're going to be making use of an HTML framework called A-Frame, where we'll be building up our scene piece by piece from the background all the way to the audio. Now, just a quick heads up, this workshop does assume a beginner's knowledge of HTML. However, we are here to help you. Please let us know if you need any assistance. We'll be using Glitch to host our projects, so go to the Glitch website, make an account as soon as possible if you haven't already. So we're going to be going through our lesson breakdown for today, and what we're going to start off with is our workshop goals. Next, we're going to be breaking down some definitions. We're going to be testing out a sample project just so you guys can get a chance to experience WebVR and what it feels like. Next, we're going to have a code along and a little bit of a demo so that you guys can have a feel for changing attributes and aspects of a WebVR project. And then finally, we're going to give you guys some time to do activities to work on your VR experience with help from us if needed. So we will be providing the slides and other reference materials after the workshop if you guys fill out a feedback form for us. So the first thing that we want to get started with is that to make sure you guys have a Glitch account. So if you don't already have a Glitch account, go ahead and create one now. Glitch is a really cool website where you can develop full-blown web apps really fast. You can collaborate really easily, and with this workshop, we're going to be using it to save your VR experience, and so you're able to come back to it as you wish. We'll give you a second to make one if you haven't already while we're going through this introduction. So go ahead and do that. And although we're helping to prevent the spread of a global pandemic, staying inside for the past few months has been a unique adjustment for a lot of us. School has been postponed or switched online, hanging out with friends isn't really possible anymore, and travel plans have been delayed or even outright canceled. Thankfully, with this workshop, we'll be able to get a glimpse into a virtual vacation experience from the comfort and safety of your own home. By channeling our inner artistry, we can create a VR scene that we'll be able to move around in. The tool that we're going to be using, like we mentioned earlier, is called A-Frame, and it's an HTML framework that creates 3D entities and adds cool effects to them. Now, let's take a moment to think about your favorite place in the world, whether that be a vacation spot you've been to before, or somewhere you want to visit but you never got the chance to. Think about what you see there, what you hear there, what kind of stuff you're able to explore and experience. Now, keep all of that in mind for our activity portion of the workshop. We'll be adding all of those elements to our scene. At the end of this workshop, you should have a super cool VR experience that you can explore right in your browser. So before we get started, we're going to go through some terminology. So the first thing that we're going to start off with is virtual reality. So virtual reality is a computer-generated 3D environment that simulates a real experience. You can move around and see the 360 views. The level of interactivity can vary from passively observing to device-assisted interactions. This is like what we're going to be doing today, with a simulation in our own browser. Though you may have also heard or seen VR headsets that you can wear to experience a 3D environment. Next, we have augmented reality. So this is a little bit different because it's a computer-generated experience where a virtual world is superimposed onto the user's view of the real world. So a really good example of this is actually Pokemon Go. So where you can see your world in the lens of the Pokemon Go world. So you can see your Pokemon, your trainer gyms, and that all transposed onto our world. So today we're going to be using some web tools and languages to create our VR experiences on our own devices. So just to quickly go over a term that you might be unfamiliar with, a framework is basically reusable code that you use to structure your whole program. It's like a code library that goes on the outside. Essentially, you use your program to fill in the holes inside the framework. Next, HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it's the language of the web. It's used to build the content of a website, including text, images, and hyperlinks. We'll be playing around with HTML today in our project to modify the virtual environments in our browsers. So now that we have those definitions out of the way, I want to talk about the main framework we'll be using that will make everything possible. A-Frame is an open source framework for developing WebVR. It's all based in HTML. Because it is cross-platform, we can experience A-Frame projects using anything from an Oculus Rift, which is a VR headset, to the browser on our desktop computer. WebVR is essentially a tool that makes it possible to experience VR in our browser. We can use WebVR to develop, experience, and share our VR projects. In our project, this is built off of the concept of a 3D scene graph. So this is a really common data structure used in vector-based graphics editing applications, as well as in all of our favorite modern computer games. It's the way that the game arranges the logical relationship between multiple entities in a graphical scene. Now, I know that sounds really complicated, but it's basically an organizational method for arranging all the different graphics in your game or editing application. As with any framework, documentation is key to understanding what your code does and being aware of all of its capabilities. A-Frame's documentation is linked in the Quick Start Guide, and you're going to need it to choose your entities and add any attributes as needed. So, there are 2 test glitch projects linked in the Quick Start Guide under the heading Testing Sample. So go ahead and open up whichever one you'd like to now. We're going to give you guys 2 minutes to explore the sample so that you're able to get a feel for what the VR aspect looks like and how to move around in it. So to walk around the scene, you use the arrow keys or the WASD keys, and you can click and drag your mouse to turn. So what do you guys see? Cool, so it looks like you guys are seeing a lot of things. So the canvas, what happens if you move away from the center of the canvas? What happens if you move really far away from the center? I hope that you guys got a chance to explore this a little bit. If you pass through the 3D entities, did you guys figure out what happens then? So you guys are free to explore this some more while we go through the rest of our workshop, but it's really interesting because there's a very clear depth of perception here. Now that you guys sort of got a feel for WebVR and what it feels like inside your browser, we're hoping that you're able to come up with some ideas for your virtual vacation. So this next part of our presentation is going to be more of a code along. So we're going to look at a simpler project. The link can once again be found in your Quick Start Guide under the code along section. So click that link and open it up. Then go to the project tab. Click Remix to Project. So you'll find Remix to Project at the bottom of the page. So if I wanted to just demo this for you guys, you can click either Edit Project or Remix this. And when we do that, it's going to create your own version of the project that we gave you. So now once you open up this project, you're able to go in and edit it on your own and change whatever aspects you want. So to be able to actually change the code in this project, once it loads, we're going to go to the left side of the page. And on the left side, hopefully it's loaded for you guys, but there should be a file list. So we're going to open up the index.html file. As you guys can see right here, we're going to click on that, and this is the code that we can see for our project. So before we get you guys to change a few things in this project on your own, I just want to show you how you can preview your app. So you can either preview it by clicking the show button and choose to do it in a new window or right next to the code. So that's what we have right here. So when we're doing this, we're able to see our different aspects of each entity that we've added in this sample project. So we want you to guys observe the tags and observe the index.html file and the code within it. So for example, with the box here, we've got a rotation attribute, and you can see that our box here is rotating. Next, with the sphere, we've got some color attributes. So this color will assign a color to the sphere. And finally, we have a cylinder, which has a position attribute. And this position attribute will tell us where we want to place this entity. So going back to the color for just a quick second, I don't know if you guys recognize what type of color this is, but it's done in hex code, so you can use any type of HTML color picker to choose whichever color you want to assign each of your entities. So we've linked one in the Quick Start Guide right here. So you guys can use this hex code color picker to choose each of your own colors. So we're going to give you guys 5 minutes to try out your own project and try out a few of the following challenges here. So the first thing that we want you guys to do is to try to change the color of the sphere or whatever shape that you want. So like I said earlier, you can use it using the hex code. To change the position, we're going to talk about that a little bit more, because the way that it's done is it's represented in the X, Y, and Z planes. So each object has a position, the first digit being the X plane, the second digit being the Y plane, and the third digit being the Z plane. So this might be a little bit confusing, but basically what this is the X plane will be responsible for moving your object left or right, the Y plane will move it up or down, and finally the Z plane will move it forwards or backwards. So that is what the position attribute does, but the last thing that we want to talk about is to change the rotation of the box. So the rotation is an interesting attribute because it is similar to the plane in that, or the position attribute in that it changes depending on the X, Y, and Z planes, but obviously the rotation, you can change it and it will, for example, if I demo this right now, if I change this to 0, but I change it, for example, 45 degrees in the Y plane, then it will look different in the Y plane. So we're going to give you guys 5 minutes to go ahead and try these challenges on your own. We've included some notes and examples of how to change each thing in the code example right here. So we do have a question in the chat regarding the size of your entities. We will be explaining that a little bit further as we go along when we're adding our own entities. But basically there will be different attributes to be able to change the scale of your entities. So that includes width and height and depth, depending on what type of shape it is. But we will explain that further. So I hope that you guys got the opportunity to be able to change those different aspects in your glitch project. So we're going to be able to hopefully participate in our activities that will help us change even more different aspects. So now that we're done exploring the software and have dipped our toes into making a few of our own changes, we've entered the DIY portion of the workshop. So we've linked the glitch template project in the quick start guide, and you're going to use it as a template and build up your own VR scene. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes to do this after, but you can use the template and build up your own VR scene. By doing that, you can click view source of the link that you clicked in the quick start guide. And then remix it, so like we just did with the project that we were just working on. And now that you've got your own copy of this template, it's yours to start building upon. So head on over to the index.html file, same thing that we did as last time, on the left-hand side of the page, and make sure to follow along with us for the rest. When you want to check out the progress and outputs of your code changes, click on the Show button near the top right, and then choose either in a new window or next to code to see the changes in real time. So this project is based off of shapes. So we're going to be building them and adding them together to create objects. Because we have a limited amount of shapes at our disposal for this activity, anything that you want to create must be made with combinations of shapes. So like you guys saw in the earlier testing projects, an ice cream cone could be made with 2 spheres and a cone turned upside down. The concept is kind of like Minecraft, where you use small building blocks to create larger things, except in A-frame, you don't only have access to cubes. You will have to experiment a bit with this part to make things work. So before we get started, we're going to give you guys some suggestions of what you can add to your VR vacation experience. So if you wanted to have a beach, for example, you could add a beach ball, a beach umbrella, a boombox, a towel, a picnic basket, that kind of stuff. Maybe you want to explore an event that you want to go to, like a concert or a festival. So you can add objects relating to that and how you would experience that. So we're going to continue on to our first activity. So first thing that we want you guys to do is to find the city or the place that you want to be transported to. So you have to choose a 360 background of your choice from the Flickr photo album that we linked in the quick start guide. and make sure that the photo is a 360 photo. Otherwise, it will look wonky. So we want to show you guys this photo album. So this is the one, we got it from the VR image backgrounds link right here. So there are 24,000 photos in this photo pool, so you can just click the search button right here, and maybe you want to go to a beach, so we'll type in beach. So you can select any of these, and what we're going to do is we're going to need to download them. So to do this, we come to the side right here, and then there's a button called download this photo. So once you choose your photo, you can download it using the original size. And once it's downloaded, I've already downloaded mine, so I'm not going to do that right now. But once we've downloaded it, we're going to go back to our project, and we're going to click it so that we're able to upload it. So we're going to click new file right here, and then we're going to upload the file. So to do that, we can upload whatever file that we want, whether that be like a photo or 360 background photo that we want to upload. And now it's uploaded as an asset. So once we've done that, you can import it to the assets file, and it will be now able to be used, and you can add it into your project as much times as you want. So to do this, we're going to be able to add this into our scene. So I'm going to go into my assets folder. I have downloaded a bunch more stuff in here, but for example, I want this beach photo that I'm looking at right here. So I can copy this link, and what we're going to do is add it to our index.html file. But the way that we have to add it is a very specific way. So we have linked the code that you can use to add it right here. So a-sky, and then we're going to put the source. And the source is just the image link that you copied from the assets folder. So first, copy this code and then put it into your code right here. You're going to put it in between your a-scene tags. So this is really important because the a-scene tag will determine what shows up in your scene. So I just put mine at the bottom, right at the end of my a-scene tag. So we have the a-sky tag, and then we put the source in. So the source is the one that I copied and I pasted in here, and that's what the sky will show up as. So when we try and preview this app, we're able to see that the image that I chose is inside here. And now we can see that we have the beach. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes to do that on your own. I know that I went through that a little bit quickly, but we're going to leave up the instructions here. This code will have the a-sky tags already, as you can see right here. So all you need to do is just copy the link from your asset and put it in here where it says link here. So we hope that you guys were able to add a VR photo to your project. If you're still having issues, go ahead and message any of the volunteers. But we're going to be continuing on to our next activity. So we're going to be adding a 3D entity. This is where you can start making objects that might appear on your vacation. For example, maybe you want to make a 3D beach ball, or an umbrella, or a towel, or a picnic basket. So we want to go check out A-Frame's documentation. So this documentation is linked in the Quick Start Guide right at the top. So this is going to be a really important link. We're going to go in here and scroll all the way to the bottom. So there's going to be a subheading called primitives, and under this is all the different types of shapes that you can use. So for example, if you want to create a box, you can use this code. Here, this is how you would create a basic box. For example, if you want to create an octahedron, this is the code that you would use to do that. So You can scroll through all of this and choose whichever entity you want to add. And each of these have their own attributes that can be customized so that you're able to see the object. So if you add one of these and you refresh your page and you see that it's not showing up, it might be because you misspelled one of its attributes or one of its values. So in that case, double check your syntax and try again. Another thing to note, like we were talking about earlier with size and scale, it depends on what type of object the object is. So for example, if you want to create a cylinder, you can choose specifically to set the height as 3 and the radius as 1.5. Now you might be wondering what these numbers actually mean. Is it in pixels? Is it in like, basically what it's in is in meters. So it's kind of hard to imagine because we're using this in our browser, but it's done in meters because if you were using like a VR headset, then you would be able to see it based on how large it is in meters. So that's what we can use. So the list of all of the attributes that you can change are here. So for example, here we have height, here we have other types of scales or width or that kind of stuff. And each object that you're adding will have a different type of scale. So for example, a tetrahedron, you can add just the radius as 5 and you can change other attributes like that. So we want to give you guys a reminder that when you are adding this stuff to your tags, we want you to make sure that it's between the A-scene tags. So once again, this is the only way that your objects will show up. So if I want to add, for example, a box, I'm going to grab the code that I already wrote that is a box, and I'm going to put it in between my A-scene tags. So I've added a bunch of different attributes, but once again, you can go into the documentation and choose what type of attributes you want to add. There's like so many. You don't have to add all of them because all of them do have default values. But once I did this, so I added a box. So when we go and see my project, we can see that there is a box being added right here. So hopefully you guys were able to understand how to add entities, but we're going to give you guys 5 minutes to add 1 or 2 or 3 entities to add to your scene. And once again, a quick note before we let you guys go, position is a really important attribute because that tells you where the object is in space. So definitely add that attribute. You can add rotation if you want. That might be an important one depending on if you want your object to be rotated a certain way. So I think that those ones are probably the most important attributes that you should always have. You can also add a shadow if you'd like. And once again, like I said, you can add heights and widths and stuff like that. As Jenna mentioned in the chat, if you guys are having trouble seeing your object, make sure to change the position attribute to change it so that you're able to see it. It might either be behind you, so you might need to turn around in your VR scene, and there's a chance that it might be, for example, on the ground, or maybe it's up in the sky, depending on what you changed with your position attribute. So make sure to take that into account if you're ever confused about where your object went. And we're going to give you guys maybe 1 or 2 minutes to finish that up so we can move on to our next activity. So I hope you guys were able to add a few entities to your scene. So we're going to move on to our next activity. So we have an object or 2 now, but they're very basic and they look very plain. So what if we want to add a texture or a skin to them? To do this, we use the texture attribute, which places the image around the object of your choice. This is really helpful because now we can turn our boring shape to an object that actually looks like something. Now, the attribute specifically that we use to do this is called the source attribute. So by adding the source attribute with a link to the photo that you want to use as a texture in the entity you want to add the texture to. So it sort of looks like this with whichever entity that you're using. For example, if I want to add an image to my box, I'll add the source, and then add the image URL right between the source links. Now, a quick note, you can't just paste any image URL into into the double quotes, because as it says on the slide, you do have to download the image and then upload it back to your assets folder, like we did with the 360 photo. And then from that assets folder that you uploaded into Glitch, you can copy the link and then place the link into the source attribute. So that's how we're gonna add texture to our 3D entities. Now, before we demo it, we're just gonna go on a quick tangent and talk about the asset management system. So if you know that you're gonna be reusing a certain image more than once, it might be helpful to set it as an asset. So usually when adding an image, the system loads it into the scene from the link you provided. If you have multiple of the same image linked, it has to load it separately each time, which can be time consuming. So if you're setting it as an asset, it will load once and then you're able to use it easily as many times as you'd like without having to wait for it to load. So we're gonna demo this before we let you guys do this on your own. And we're gonna talk specifically more about the assets tag. So we have these tags called the A-assets. So this is where we're going to place all of our assets. I've already placed a few in here, but if you're adding, for example, an image, which is what we're going to be adding with the textures, you take the code that we've placed in the guide right here. So this is the one, if you're using it more than once, you put it between the A-assets tag. So just copy this. And what we're going to do is we're going to put it in here. So there's a few really important things to note when you're taking these, copying these and putting these in here, because there are things that you do need to add. So if it's an image, then obviously we have to have the source. So like I said, upload it the same way that you uploaded your 360 photo by uploading it from the assets folder. But there is another thing that we need to add. So as you can see here, called ID. So the ID is really important because this is the unique code that you're going to use to identify which image you're using. So obviously, whenever we upload pictures, the links are super, super long and kind of ugly. We don't want to have them in our code like that because it would just make it really long and difficult to read. So by putting an ID, and just to emphasize, this ID does have to be unique, so you can't have two IDs that are the same. But you use that and you name it whatever the image is describing. So for example, if I have a photo of a boombox, I can name the ID as a boombox. So then where I added my box, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I just had a plain box that I added. But now I want to add the source, and the source becomes the boombox that I added right here. So this has to be the same as the ID, and you have to make sure that there's a hashtag in front of it. So this tells you, or this tells the code that you're using the ID from the assets tag. So to do that, you just use the code that we linked and make sure to have a unique ID. And then anytime you're using a source inside any of your entities, you can just use that code, use that unique ID. So we did also actually link a few assets and stuff, or a few sources to find textures that you might want to add. But once again, you can add anything as a texture, any type of photo. So that could be like even somebody's face, or like a concrete texture or a sand texture, or something that you want to add. What I did in my example was add the texture of a boombox. So when I went to go and reload my project, we can see that if I turn around, I've added the texture of a boombox, and you can see here that we have a little boombox. So go ahead and do that. We're going to give you guys 7 or 8 minutes to work on that on your own, and message any of the volunteers if you need any help with anything. So we hope that you were able to add a few textures to your entities that you've added so far. But next, our activity is going to be talking about animating our objects. So this activity is things might get a little bit tricky. We're going to be exploring animations with objects in your scene. For example, maybe you want your beach ball object to be moving in your scene. To do this, we use the animation feature. The code to do this should look like the code linked in the Quick Start Guide under Activity 4 Adding Animation. This code is placed inside the open tag of the entity that you're animating as an attribute. Pay attention to syntax on this one. All the properties within the animation attribute should be inside double quotes, and each property must be followed by a colon, while each value must be followed by a semicolon. This is the way that the entity will know how to animate your object. So I'm just going to demo this for you guys because I know that might have been a little bit confusing, but we're going to go into here and then we have the code. So this is the animation property attribute. This is the animation attribute. So you guys can also look at the documentation right here. So we're going to see basically how to add animation and what different properties and stuff that we can add. So the things that I will let you guys know are important to think about are basically the position or the properties of how you want to animate your object. So the two main ways that you can do this is either rotation or position. So as we know, as we've learned based on what we've done so far in this workshop, position attribute will depend on, or will tell us where the object is in space. On the other hand, rotation will tell us how it's rotated, obviously. But with the animation aspect of it, the difference is that with the position property, we're going to be able to choose our object to go from the spot that it's currently at to the next spot that we want it to go to. So with the rotation aspect, on the other hand, the rotation aspect will tell us where we want to rotate it from its original starting point. So to sort of break down what each little part means, so as I said, you can choose either position or rotation right here as the property, and then the to attribute will tell you where you want it to go. So obviously the original position of this sphere is 3, -2, 7, but I said I want to move it to 3, -2, and 5. So that's where it's going to go. The DUR is the duration. So that means that how long is the animation going to last for? And I know that this number looks really big, but it's measured in milliseconds. So 5,000 milliseconds is 5 seconds, which means that the animation total will take 5 seconds. So this is important. So if you want your animation to slow down, maybe it's going too fast, then think about increasing the duration. Next, we have loop. So loop basically just means it will loop your animation as many times as you choose it to. So for example, I chose that I want my sphere animation to loop 3 times. You can either choose 0 if you want the animation to just not loop and just happen once, and you can even just take out the attribute if you only want it to happen once. But if you want it to continually keep happening on a loop forever, you can just set this attribute to true. And so when I do that, this attribute will loop forever. So what I was looping was actually the beach ball. And so the movement will go forever if I set that to true. Finally, the last thing is the DIR, which is the direction. So if you feel like your rotation or your position animation is not going in the right way, you can either change this to reverse. The two options are alternate and reverse. So if we set this to alternate, then it will go in the opposite way that it was going before. So as you can see, it's going from this position to the other position, and it will keep alternating between the two. If you want it to just go one way, you can take out this whole attribute. But so those are the 3 options, is not having the attribute at all, and it will just go the normal way. Second option is alternating, so it'll go back and forth. And third option is putting this as reverse, which means it'll go backwards. So that's pretty much what we've done with animations. Like I said, if you want to change this to a rotation animation, we just change this property to rotation, and then you change these values to the degrees that you want it to rotate. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes to work on that. We have linked the rotation animation and the position animation loop, so you can do that yourself, and that might make it a little bit easier for you guys. So like I said, this part of the activity might be a little bit confusing, so we are going to give you guys 8 minutes to work on this. So now we're going to come to our last activity of the night. I hope that you guys had some fun with animating your entities, but we're going to be adding some text and some music to our project. So obviously VR experience is supposed to mimic reality, and what better way to do that than by adding sound that captures the energy of your vacation spot. To add sound, whether that's music or background noise, there are 2 options. So you can either have background music present throughout your whole scene. So to do this, we've linked this in the quick start guide. If you want to add background music throughout your whole scene, add this link between your assets tag. And so with the audio, you do have to make sure that it's a .wav or a .mp3 file, and you're going to download that. So if you're downloading it off of YouTube, for example, you can just use any YouTube to MP3 converter, download that file, and then upload it the same way that you uploaded any other images to your project. So I've already downloaded some calming ocean waves music. So I want to add that to my scene. So I'm just going to copy that and then place it in the audio. So that's what I've done right here. And it's in my assets folder, or in my assets tag. And so this will make sure that the audio that I'm using is included in my whole scene. But, so let's try and see if we can hear that. I'm gonna hopefully be able to share my computer sound. I don't know if you guys are able to hear that. But it should be the sounds of the ocean that we're hearing. So that's the simple way to add background music throughout your whole scene. But if you do want to add background music that is positioned to a certain location. So for example, I have my boombox right here. What if I want to make sure that the music is coming out of the boombox? I can do this by using the positional sound attribute. So that's done using this, and we can attach it to a position in my code. So we'll add that sound right here, and I've added the source. I've set autoplay to true, so that means that it will automatically play whenever I want, or whenever I open the web page. And that will actually ensure that, and so I'm going to add a position to it. So I've set it at the same position as my box, so -3, -1.57, which is where my box is, right here. So the sound is going to sound like it's coming out of the box, out of the boom box, and as I go farther away from it or closer to it, oh, that's a little bit loud. But as I go further away from it, it will get quieter, and if I go closer to it, I'll just mute it for a second. But as I go closer to it, the sound will get louder, and then as I go further away from it, the sound will get quieter. So those are your 2 options for adding sound. So once again, you can either do it inside your scene tags, so it will be attached to a position, or you can add it inside your asset tags, so it will be attached to your whole background. So that is about what we have it for sounds, but we want to also talk about adding text to our VR experience. So adding text is really easy as well. Basically, you can just use the code that's linked in the Quick Start Guide and replace it with whatever values that you want. So in our text, we have a value. You can write down whatever you're adding in your text right here, and then you can use the hex color to change the color of your text. Obviously, position if you want to have it in the sky, or if you want to have the text on the ground, that kind of thing. And then finally, the scale will change the size of the text. So obviously the scale is dependent on the X, Y, and Z attributes. So yeah, if I wanted to add the text, I've already added text to mine. So as you can see, these are all different text boxes. So when we go in here and we see my project, oh, I'm going to refresh my project so that we can see the text. So as we can see up here, we have text floating around in the sky with some of our links, which you can go and check out, and telling us to turn around. So yeah, go ahead and try and add some music maybe, whether that's your favorite song or some background music from whatever area you're in, that kind of thing, and add some text to your experience. So we'll give you a few minutes to work on that. Okay, so I hope that you guys were able to find some good music for your scenes, but we're going to be talking a little bit more about our bonus activity. So this is a little bit of an optional activity. We're not going to go super in depth with this one because it's sort of out of the scope of our workshop for today, but you guys can go ahead, definitely work on this on your own and explore it as you wish. So the idea with this activity is that you can make the animations that you added in the fourth activity controlled by the click of a mouse. You can control the changing of the color of your entities also when you hover over with your mouse. So we're going to show you what this would look like. This sample is also linked in the Quick Start Guide, but we'll just show you what it looks like. So with the hover example, when I hover over this is going to change colors. So see, it's changed colors as I hover over, and then when I take it off, it changes back to its original color. Same thing with this cube. We've changed colors, and then we hover over it, and now it's a different color again. So that is what the hovering basically does, and then when we click on this, it will move, and then when I click on it again, it comes back to its original position. Same thing with this one, it will rotate and come back to its original position. So this is something interesting that you guys can try exploring on your own. All of this code is linked in the Quick Start Guide. So you guys definitely have to follow these instructions if you guys want to work on this, but this is sort of like an extra feature and you guys don't have to do this if you don't want to. But basically, that pretty much concludes our workshop for today. We are going to be demoing some of your guys's work, some of your guys' VR scenes that you guys have made. So if you would like to see that, see what everybody else has done, and if you want to include maybe what you've done yourself, we can work on that and we can demo that for our project today, or for our workshop today. But nonetheless, thank you guys for joining us. We hope that you guys learned a ton and were able to make a wonderful virtual world. And obviously this might not be the real thing, but you do have the freedom to design and mix and match your favorite places and things and experience it right on your device. So we hope that you guys enjoyed your virtual vacation. Just a quick note, PTC is always hosting loads of other workshops, networking events, and panels. Make sure to follow us on our social media with the links that we included in the slides or at the end of the Quick Start document to keep an eye out for any new events.